Hey folks, welcome back for another build video. This time around we're focused on Ridgeway's Pride chest piece and the Courier backpack. So starting off with our specialization, we've gone with Firewall to get access to the Firewall Crusader Ballistic Shield and the Firewall Tactical Link. And as a bonus we get the Frontline Recovery talent, which grants 30% health on kill. For our primary weapon we've gone with the St. Elmo's Engine Exotic Assault Rifle. For the moment, I'm just going to keep putting this thing on builds until they nerf it into the ground. The Actom S talent is a great way to get shock ammo, but one of the real benefits here is the selection of mods that you get. For our secondary weapon, I've gone with the Mop for that plus 10% armor on kill attribute, and then we've also rolled Preservation, giving us an additional 10% armor on kill over 5 seconds. For our sidearm, we're going with the Orbit, which obviously sports the Perfect Finisher talent, giving us 35% critical hit chance and 40% critical hit damage for 15 seconds after getting a kill with this weapon. But realistically, you're just going to be using St. Elmo's Engine the majority of the time and then switching to the Mop when you need to get some armor on kill. For our mask, we've gone with the one piece of Fenris Group AB to get that plus 10% assault rifle damage. As you can see down there, it's not a god rolled piece, but it does have usable stats of weapon damage, critical hit damage, and critical hit chance. And then we've gone with critical hit chance in the mod slot. Again, your mileage may vary depending on what your particular math works out to be. For our backpack, we've gone with one piece of Habsburg Guard, specifically the Courier, because it sports the all-important Perfect Creeping Death, which increases the effective radius of Creeping Death from 8 meters to 10 meters and reduces the cooldown from 15 seconds to 10 seconds. And as you can see there, we've gone with armor regen and critical hit damage in the attribute slots. Ideally, you'd like both critical hit chance and critical hit damage in those secondary attribute slots, but we can certainly work with what we have here. And again, we've gone with critical hit chance in the mod slot to buff the overall critical hit chance to that 60% cap. For our chest piece, we have the aforementioned Ridgeway's Pride, which of course comes with a weapon damage core, critical hit chance, critical hit damage, and then we have put critical hit damage in the mod slot. And for our talent, we have the Bleeding Edge. Shooting enemies within 15 meters applies bleed to the target, and it repairs 3 to 48% of your armor per second for every enemy that is bleeding within 15 meters. So while bleed itself is a fairly weak status effect, if you can get into the thick of things, surround yourself with a bunch of enemies, and then apply bleed to them, you're going to get a massive amount of armor repair, up to 48%. Realistically, you're going to be looking at between 6 and 24% the majority of the time. That's going to be between 2 and 4 enemies within 15 meters. But if you can work those angles and really use this shield build, you can absolutely get a significant chunk of your armor repaired every second. And that's really where the Perfect Creeping Death comes into play here. So ordinarily, to really utilize Ridgeway's Pride, you're going to have to go in and spray a bunch of bullets around to apply that bleed to more than one enemy so that you can get a greater percentage of armor repair per second. But with Perfect Creeping Death, you can start an encounter by just rushing in, focusing on one enemy, and it's automatically going to apply bleed to every enemy within 10 meters of that initial target. So it's a great way to make it really easy for yourself to get the maximum amount of armor repair per second during an encounter. And while I know a lot of us, myself included, have questioned the Habsburg Guard construction with an armor core, headshot damage as a brand bonus, and putting Perfect Creeping Death on that particular backpack, it actually worked really well here. The armor core is not a bad thing to have in close-up encounters. As you can see there, we've also gone with another armor core in our holster slot to give ourselves some additional survivability and also to increase the static amount of armor repair we're getting per second, because obviously, as you can read there, it is a percentage of our total armor. So the more armor we have, the more armor repair we're getting per second as a result. For our gloves, we have our first piece of Brazos de Arquebus. The plus 10% skill haste isn't really being utilized, but it is one step on our way to getting that +1 skill tier, which will in turn buff our shield. And as you can see there, we happen to get a piece with critical hit damage and critical hit chance in the secondary attribute slots, which allowed us to roll that core to weapon damage. If you can't find a piece that allows you to roll to weapon damage, you could always stick with the armor core and see how that feels first. As I was saying with the Habsburg Guard, some armor cores here aren't the worst thing, as it allows you to survive for quite a bit longer and amplifies the static amount that Bleeding Edge repairs your armor. And for our holster, we have our second piece of Brazos de Arquebus, and of course it is Pucaro's holster. Just a really great piece to put on a number of builds, especially close-up and personal shield builds. You get a core attribute of armor, weapon damage in that secondary attribute slot, and then we have rolled critical hit damage in the other secondary attribute slot there. And we get that second brand bonus of +1 skill tier, increasing both the charges on our Reviver Hive and Firewall Striker Ballistic Shield. And then for our knee pads, we've gone with Fox's Prayer. That plus 10% rifle damage is doing absolutely nothing for us, but that 8% damage to target out of cover is just so powerful right now. And then on top of that, we've gone with critical hit damage in that secondary attribute slot as well. For our skills, we've already talked about them, but we'll run through them really quick. We have the Reviver Hive and the Striker Ballistic Shield. Real quick on the Reviver Hive, you could go a number of different routes here, but with only one skill tier invested, the Reviver Hive just seems like a great option to go with. Having the Reviver Hive there helps you from completely wiping if you do make a mistake in what is a generally precarious situation. And for our second skill, we have the Striker Ballistic Shield. The reason for including this is, of course, that damage bonus down there of 12% per enemy within that 45-degree cone that you will see during the video. And it really does help amplify your damage, especially given that we conceded one weapon core to get that Habsburg Guard piece on there with Perfect Creeping Death. This was a great way to make back some of that damage, especially since you're intentionally going to be throwing yourself into groups of enemies. This shield can really take advantage of being in that crowd, keeping them all in front of you to make it that much easier to take them all down. That all being said, I wanted to provide one quick variation on this build. As you can see, we have swapped Firewall out for the Technician specialization, and that really is the crux of the change. Everything else feeds off of that. And the idea here is, if you try out the original version and find yourself going down too often, or you just find your shield breaking too often, a really quick way to buff your shield would be to swap out Firewall for the Technician specialization. You're going to be conceding some weapon damage, but what you're going to gain is an additional skill tier to get you from a level 3 to a level 4 shield. And on top of that, you can now also throw on the Artificer Hive if you so choose, to help you keep the shield at full health. Because as we've said before, this particular hive releases a drone periodically that will repair your shield while in use. That all being said, I would recommend both variants. Both are really fun to run with, tailored for different playstyles depending on how offensive you want to be. I definitely recommend taking this one out, seeing how it feels. You've got Shock, you've got Bleed, and you've got Burn, all amplified by Perfect Creeping Death on the backpack. As always, like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you want to see more stuff like this, and continue to help the channel grow, and we will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
Give up! detected. Immediate medical assistance needed.